Welcome, special soul. Tonight we will be falling asleep to what life was really like for women in ancient Rome. Before we begin, I just wanted to say thank you for joining, and I hope your thoughts start to slow and you start to rest. Also, comment down below what time it is where you live. Now let's get started. Imagine a world where your daily life was dictated by marriage alliances, household duties, and societal expectations that have largely been forgotten. While Roman men built empires, what were the women doing? This video reveals the quiet, often overlooked lives of ancient Roman women, their struggles, their triumphs, and their surprising influence in a patriarchal society that rarely puts them in the spotlight. Their stories are far more compelling than you might expect. Picture, if you will, the gentle morning light filtering through a Roman villa's atrium. The air is warm and carries the scent of olive oil and fresh bread from the kitchen. In this peaceful setting, we begin our story of Roman girls and the quiet, complex world they inhabited from their very first breath. The moment of birth. When a Roman baby girl entered the world, her fate hung in the balance for 9 precious days. Unlike today, where every newborn is celebrated, Roman fathers held the power of life and death over their children through a practice called patria potestas. The father could choose to accept the child into the family or not. For infant girls, this decision carried extra weight. Sons meant continuation of the family name, inheritance, and future support in old age. Daughters, while cherished, represented a different kind of investment, one that would eventually benefit another family through marriage. If accepted, the baby girl would be lifted up by her father on the 9th day after birth, symbolically acknowledging her place in the household. She would receive her name in a quiet ceremony, often derived from her father's name with a feminine ending. A girl named Julia belonged to the Julius family, Claudia to the Claudius family, and so on, her very identity woven into the fabric of Roman male lineage. Early childhood. A shared beginning. For the first few years of life, Roman boys and girls shared remarkably similar experiences. Picture them together in the warm afternoon sun of the villa's garden, little ones in simple tunics, their laughter mixing with the gentle splash of fountain water and the distant hum of household activity. Both boys and girls played with similar toys, small clay dolls with movable limbs, wooden hoops to roll with sticks, knuckle bones for simple games of chance, and miniature chariots. Archaeological excavations have uncovered these treasures, still bearing the tiny fingerprints of children who played with them centuries ago. Their days were filled with the universal experiences of childhood, chasing butterflies through columns of sunlight, listening to stories told by grandmothers in the cool shade of porticos, and falling asleep to the gentle murmur of adult conversations drifting through the villa's corridors. But even in these early years, subtle differences began to emerge. Girls were often given dolls not just as toys, but as gentle preparation for their future roles. These weren't simple playthings. They were beautifully crafted miniature women with elaborate hairstyles, tiny jewelry, and complete wardrobes. Through play, little girls absorbed lessons about beauty, presentation, and the care of a household. The diverging path. Education and expectations. As Roman children reached the age of 6 or 7, their paths began to diverge like 2 streams flowing from the same spring. This separation wasn't harsh or sudden. It unfolded gradually, like the changing of seasons. Boys from well-to-do families were often sent to formal schools or given private tutors. They learned to read and write Latin and sometimes Greek, studied mathematics, rhetoric and philosophy. Their education was designed to prepare them for public life, to speak in the forum, to serve in the military, to participate in the complex world of Roman politics and commerce. Girls, on the other hand, followed a different, more intimate path of learning. In most Roman households, their education happened within the warm embrace of family life. Mothers, grandmothers, and female slaves became their teachers, passing down knowledge through gentle daily practice rather than formal lessons. Picture a young Roman girl sitting beside her mother in a sunny room, learning to spin wool into thread. The motion is rhythmic and soothing, the spindle turning steadily while conversation flows between them. This isn't just about creating textile, it's about absorbing lessons in patience, skill, and the quiet satisfaction of creating something beautiful and useful with one's own hands. She learns to weave on a simple loom, her small fingers gradually mastering the complex dance of warp and weft. The patterns she creates tell stories, geometric designs that have been passed down through generations of Roman women, each thread connecting her to a long line of mothers and daughters stretching back through time. Wealthy households, a different kind of learning. In the most affluent Roman families, girls might receive more formal education, a privilege that set them apart from their less fortunate sisters. These fortunate daughters learned to read and write, often in both Latin and Greek. They studied poetry, particularly the works that were considered appropriate for young ladies, verses about love, beauty, and domestic virtue. Imagine a young patrician girl in her family's private library, scrolls of papyrus carefully arranged on wooden shelves around her. The afternoon light streams through high windows as she practices her letters on a wax tablet, the stylus making soft scratching sounds in the peaceful silence. Her tutor, perhaps a learned Greek slave, speaks in gentle tones, encouraging her progress in both language and literature. These educated girls might learn mathematics sufficient for managing a household's accounts, and some even studied philosophy, though always with the understanding that this knowledge would make them more interesting companions to their future husbands, rather than prepare them for public intellectual life, the art of being a Roman lady. Whether wealthy or modest in means, all Roman girls learned what we might call the invisible curriculum, the countless subtle lessons about how to move through the world as a Roman woman. They learned the art of walking with dignity, their posture straight and graceful even as children. They observed how their mothers received guests, how they managed servants with firm but fair authority, how they presented themselves in public with modest elegance. Hair arrangement became an important skill, and even young girls learned the basics of creating elaborate styles that would mark them as properly Roman. Picture a mother's gentle hands teaching her daughter to braid and pin her hair, the intimate ritual repeated each morning as sunlight gradually fills their chamber. They learned about fabrics and colours, understanding which combinations spoke of respectability and which might be considered too bold. The weight and drape of different textiles became familiar friends. The cool smoothness of linen for hot summer days, the warm embrace of wool dyed in rich colours for cooler seasons. Early whispers of marriage. Perhaps most significantly, Roman girls grew up with the gentle but persistent awareness that their childhood was preparation for marriage. This wasn't a burden imposed suddenly, but rather a reality that seeped into their consciousness as naturally as learning to speak. From a very young age, they understood that their future lay not in the public forums or military campaigns that awaited their brothers, but in the private realm of home and family. They would someday be wives and mothers, the quiet architects of domestic harmony and the bearers of the next generation. This knowledge shaped their games, their lessons, and their dreams. When they played house with their dolls, they were rehearsing their future roles. When they helped their mothers organize household activities, they were learning the complex choreography of Roman domestic life. Yet this preparation wasn't joyless or oppressive. Roman culture celebrated the dignity and importance of wives and mothers. These young girls were being prepared not for lives of limitation, but for roles that carried genuine respect and significance within Roman society. The bittersweet end of childhood. As our Roman girls grew older, approaching their 10th or 12th birthdays, the reality of approaching adulthood began to cast longer shadows across their days. In Rome, girlhood was understood to be a brief, precious time, a gentle pause between birth and the serious business of marriage and motherhood. On the eve of her wedding, a Roman girl would perform one final ritual of childhood. She would take her beloved dolls, her toys, and the simple tunic of girlhood and offer them to the household gods. This wasn't a moment of sadness, but rather a ceremonial acknowledgement that one phase of life was ending and another beginning. The little girl who had once chased butterflies through marble corridors, who had learned to spin thread in the warm afternoon sun, who had fallen asleep to stories whispered by grandmothers. She was ready to become a Roman wife, carrying forward all the gentle lessons of her childhood into the next chapter of her story. And so we conclude our first gentle exploration into the lives of Roman women, beginning with those tender early years when little girls learned to navigate a world that would shape them into the mothers, wives, and quiet influences of one of history's greatest civilizations. Next is about marriage and the creation of new families. Picture the soft rustle of silk and linen in a Roman villa's bridal chamber. The morning light filters through gauze curtains, casting gentle patterns on mosaic floors, while the distant sound of wedding preparations drifts through the corridors. Here, in this moment of transition, we discover how Roman women transformed from daughters into wives, from girls into the heart of Roman family life, the art of arrangement, fathers and betrothals in the quiet dignity of a Roman father's study. Scrolls of family genealogies lie carefully arranged on polished wooden tables. The late afternoon sun slants through high windows, illuminating discussions that would shape young lives for generations to come. Here, in these private conversations between fathers, the future marriages of Roman daughters were gently, deliberately planned. Roman marriage was rarely a matter of sudden romance or chance encounter. Instead, it was a thoughtful orchestration, a careful weaving together of families, fortunes, and social standing that required the wisdom and experience of fathers who understood the complex web of Roman society. Imagine a Roman patriarch, perhaps in his toga of deep purple or pristine white, sitting across from another father of similar standing. Between them lies not just the future happiness of their children, but the strategic alliance of two family lines. They speak in measured tones about dowries and connections, about the character of their children, and the benefits such a union might bring to both households. The young girl who would soon become a bride might know of these discussions, or she might not. Sometimes she was consulted, particularly in families where her opinion was valued. More often, she learned of her betrothal through the gentle words of her mother, delivered in the privacy of the women's quarters with all the care and preparation necessary for such momentous news. These betrothals often occurred when girls were still quite young, sometimes as early as 12 or 13, though the actual marriage ceremony might not take place for several years. This gave families time to prepare, both practically and emotionally, for the great transition ahead. In the months leading up to a Roman wedding, households buzzed with quiet activity as the bride's dowry was carefully assembled. This wasn't merely a transaction, but rather a father's way of ensuring his daughter's security and status in her new home. Picture the bride's family chambers filled with carefully folded linens, their surfaces smooth and white as fresh snow. Wooden chests, their surfaces polished to a warm glow, gradually fill with silk stolas in colours of deep blue and golden yellow, jewellery that catches the lamplight with gentle gleams of gold and silver, and household items of bronze and clay that would help establish the new bride's domestic authority. The dowry represented more than material wealth. It was a statement of the bride's worth and her family's respect for the union. A well-appointed dowry ensured that a young wife would enter her marriage with dignity, bringing not just herself but tangible contributions to her new household's prosperity and comfort. Wealthy families might include land, slaves skilled in various household arts, or even shares in commercial ventures. More modest families assembled dowries with equal care but different contents, perhaps fine wool for weaving, household gods carved from ivory, or jewellery passed down through generations of mothers and daughters. The preparation of the dowry became a ritual of transition. Mothers and daughters spent long afternoon hours together, carefully examining each item, discussing its use and significance. These quiet moments, filled with gentle instruction and shared anticipation, helped prepare young brides for their new roles as mistresses of their own households. Roman weddings were ceremonies of exquisite beauty and deep symbolic meaning, designed to honour the gravity of the transition from maiden to wife. The day began before dawn, with the bride's hair arranged in the traditional style, 6 locks carefully braided and wound around her head, secured with ribbons and perhaps flowers from the family's garden. Her wedding dress, the tunica recta, was woven from wool in the ancient tradition, its surface pure white and unadorned except for a belt tied in the knot of Hercules, a symbol that only her new husband could untie. Over this she wore a flame-coloured veil, its bright hue symbolizing the passion and fertility that marriage would bring to her life. The ceremony itself took place in the bride's family home, surrounded by the gentle murmur of relatives and friends gathering in the atrium. The air was sweet with incense and the petals of flowers scattered underfoot. Here, in the presence of 10 witnesses, the couple joined hands while the bride spoke the ancient words, "Where you are Gaius, I am Gaia," a phrase that symbolized her willingness to share completely in her husband's life and identity. But perhaps the most poignant moment came at evening, when the bride was escorted from her childhood home to her new residence. This procession moved slowly through Rome's streets, lit by torches and accompanied by songs and well-wishes from neighbours and friends. The bride carried a spindle and distaff, symbols of the domestic arts she would practice in her new home, while her husband carried her across the threshold of their house, ensuring that she would not stumble as she entered her new life. Once across that threshold, the new Roman wife found herself mistress of a domain that was entirely her own, yet bound by traditions and expectations that stretched back through generations. Her new home became the stage for a complex performance of domestic authority, one that required skill, wisdom, and the gentle art of managing both people and resources. Picture her in the early morning light, moving through rooms that are gradually becoming familiar. The keys to household stores hang at her belt, literal symbols of her authority over the family's provisions, linens, and daily necessities. The soft jingle of these keys becomes the soundtrack of her days, marking her progress through halls and chambers as she orchestrates the quiet symphony of domestic life. Roman wives were expected to be the architects of household harmony. This meant far more than simple housekeeping. They were managers of complex domestic economies that might include dozens of slaves, elaborate systems of food preparation and storage, and the intricate social choreography required to maintain their family's status and reputation. In the cool morning hours, she might be found in the atrium, receiving reports from various household slaves, the cook detailing the day's meals, the steward discussing expenditures, the children's nurses reporting on their charge's progress and needs. Her responses are measured and thoughtful, for she understands that her household's smooth operation depends on her ability to balance authority with fairness, efficiency with compassion. For most Roman wives, the ultimate fulfillment of their role came with motherhood. The birth of children, particularly sons, elevated their status within both their own households and Roman society at large. But motherhood in ancient Rome was far more than biological. It was a sacred trust that shaped the future citizens of the empire. Imagine a Roman mother in her private chambers, the afternoon light soft and golden as she guides her young children through their daily lessons. Her voice is gentle but firm as she corrects their posture, their pronunciation, their understanding of proper behavior. She is teaching them not just facts and skills, but the subtle art of being Roman, the values, traditions, and expectations that will guide them throughout their lives. Roman mothers were responsible for their children's moral education, particularly during their formative years. They told stories that illustrated virtues like courage, loyalty, and devotion to family and state. They modelled the behaviour they expected to see, understanding that children learn as much from observation as from direct instruction. For daughters, mothers served as living examples of how to navigate the complex world of Roman womanhood. They taught the practical skills, weaving, household management, the preparation of food and medicines, but also the more subtle lessons about dignity, discretion, and the quiet power that came with managing domestic life with skill and grace. Roman wives lived within a careful balance of autonomy and deference, wielding considerable power within their domestic sphere, while acknowledging the ultimate authority of their husbands in public matters. This balance required a sophisticated understanding of when to act independently and when to seek guidance or permission. Picture a Roman wife in consultation with her husband in their private study. Scrolls and tablets spread before them detail household accounts, social obligations, and decisions about their children's education. Her voice carries quiet confidence as she presents her recommendations, backed by careful observation and sound reasoning. While the final decisions may rest with her husband, Her influence in reaching those decisions is both acknowledged and valued. The concept of obedience in Roman marriage was less about submission than about partnership within clearly defined roles. A wise Roman wife understood that her effectiveness came not from challenging these boundaries, but from exercising maximum skill and creativity within them. She might not speak in the forum, but her counsel could shape the words her husband spoke there. She might not vote in elections, but her social connections and household management could significantly influence her family's political fortunes. Despite the weight of responsibilities and expectations, Roman family life was filled with moments of genuine warmth and happiness. Picture the soft conversations between husband and wife in the evening hours, when the day's obligations were complete and they could share thoughts about their children's progress, plans for upcoming festivals, or simply enjoy each other's company in the peaceful intimacy of their private chambers. There were morning moments when children would run to their mother with questions or scraped knees, seeking the comfort and wisdom that only she could provide. There were afternoon hours spent in the garden, where she might teach her daughters to tend herbs and flowers while her sons played nearby, their laughter mixing with the gentle splash of fountain water and the distant hum of city life. Roman wives took pride in their household's reputation for hospitality, in their children's accomplishments, in their husband's success in public life. They found satisfaction in the smooth operation of complex domestic machinery, in the beauty of well-prepared meals shared with friends and family, in the knowledge that their efforts contributed to their family's prosperity and standing in the community. As Roman wives matured into middle age and beyond, their influence often expanded beyond their immediate households. Older women were consulted on matters of marriage arrangement, child rearing, and social protocol. They became the keepers of family traditions, the storytellers who preserved important memories for future generations. Picture an elder Roman matron in her garden, surrounded by daughters and granddaughters who seek her counsel on matters both practical and personal. Her voice carries the authority of experience as she shares wisdom gained through decades of managing households, raising children, and navigating the complexities of Roman social life. Her words are treasured, for they represent the accumulated knowledge of a life well lived within the honoured role of Roman wife and mother. And so the cycle continued, generation after generation. Young girls who had once played with dolls in sun-dappled courtyards grew into wives and mothers, carrying forward the traditions and wisdom of their own mothers while adapting to the changing needs of their times. In these private chambers and quiet moments, Roman women created the foundation upon which one of history's greatest civilizations was built. Their influence may not have been recorded in public annals or carved in marble monuments, but it lived on in the children they raised, the households they managed, and the quiet dignity with which they fulfilled roles that were both challenging and deeply honoured. Now let's do some imagination on the daily work of women. Picture the early morning hours across Rome, from the grandest villas on the Palatine Hill to the humble apartments of the Subura. In each dwelling, women are stirring to life, some to the gentle rustle of silk and the quiet deference of household slaves, others to the harsh realities of survival in an unforgiving world. Their stories interweave like threads in a vast tapestry, each contributing to the complex beauty of Roman society. In the cool morning air of a patrician villa, imagine the soft padding of sandaled feet across polished marble floors. Here, In chambers filled with the gentle light of oil lamps and the sweet scent of imported perfumes, wealthy Roman women begin their days as conductors of elaborate domestic symphonies. The mistress of such a household rises before dawn, not to perform manual labour herself, but to orchestrate the complex choreography of dozens of lives under her care. Picture her in a flowing stola of deep blue silk, her hair already arranged by skilled slave hands into an elaborate crown of braids and curls that speaks of both fashion and status. Her first task is the morning salutatio, the receiving of household reports in the quiet dignity of her private chambers. One by one, her trusted slaves approach with gentle deference. The villicus, or estate manager, with scrolls detailing the previous day's expenditures and the day's planned activities. The chief cook with menus requiring approval. The head of the spinning women with samples of newly completed cloth. She listens with the practiced attention of someone who understands that her household's reputation, indeed her family's standing in society, depends upon these seemingly mundane decisions. Her voice, when she responds, carries quiet authority, tempered with the wisdom that comes from years of managing complex domestic economies. The morning light grows stronger as she moves through her domain, the soft jingle of her keys marking her progress. These keys, hanging from a chain at her belt, represent far more than access to storerooms and treasure chests. They symbolize her authority over an economic enterprise that might rival many commercial ventures of the day. Even in the wealthiest households, the tradition of weaving remained sacred to Roman women. In a sunny chamber set aside for this purpose, imagine our patrician matron settling at an elegant loom, its wooden frame polished smooth by generations of use. Around her, slave women work at their own looms, but her presence transforms their labour into something approaching ritual. The rhythm of the loom is hypnotic and peaceful, the gentle thunk of the beater pressing each row of weft threads tight, the whisper of the shuttle carrying coloured wool back and forth across the warp. This isn't merely the creation of cloth, but the preservation of ancient tradition, the continuation of skills passed down from mother to daughter since Rome's earliest days. Wealthy women often wove ceremonial garments, togas for their husbands' public appearances, stolas for religious festivals, swaddling clothes for newborn grandchildren. Each piece carried symbolic weight, for cloth created by the mistress of the house was considered especially blessed, imbued with the virtue and care that only freeborn Roman women could provide. Between the gentle sounds of weaving, conversation flows like water over stones. The mistress might discuss household matters with her daughters, share news from other prominent families, or simply enjoy the meditative peace that comes from creating something beautiful with skilled hands. For wealthy women whose families owned property beyond Rome's walls, additional responsibilities beckoned. Picture a Roman matron travelling by litter along dusty country roads, her cushioned seat swaying gently as slaves carry her toward family estates that require her oversight and wisdom. The countryside villa that greets her arrival sits nestled among rolling hills dotted with olive groves and vineyards. Here, her responsibilities expand beyond household management to encompass agricultural enterprises that feed both her family and Rome's hungry markets. She moves through wine cellars where amphoras stand in neat rows like silent soldiers, their contents aging to perfection under her watchful eye. In consultation with bailiffs and farm managers, she makes decisions about which fields to plant, when to harvest, how to price the estate's products for sale in Rome's busy markets. Her voice carries across orchards where slaves tend fruit trees, through granaries where wheat awaits transport to the capital, into workshops where olives surrender their precious oil under the steady pressure of wooden presses. These estate visits might last days or weeks, during which she combines the practical oversight of agricultural operations with the social obligations that come with rural prominence. Local families seek her advice on marriages and business ventures. She serves as patron to smaller farmers, offering protection and guidance in exchange for loyalty and support. As our gentle journey carries us from marble halls to crowded tenements, the reality of Roman life reveals its harsher truths. In the narrow streets of Rome's working districts, where sunlight struggles to reach between tall buildings and the air carries the sense of cooking food and human industry, poor women face each dawn with very different concerns. Picture a woman in the Suburra, Rome's most densely populated district, as she stirs in the pre-dawn darkness of a small apartment she shares with her family. Her tunic is simple wool, dyed in practical brown or grey, mended carefully where wear has begun to show. Her hands, calloused from years of hard work, move with practiced efficiency as she prepares for another day of labour. For such women, survival depends not on managing others' work, but on the strength of their own backs and the skill of their own hands. Some join their husbands in small farming plots outside the city walls, where the day begins with feeding animals and continues with the endless tasks of agricultural life: weeding, planting, harvesting, tending to chickens and goats whose eggs and milk provide essential nutrition for growing families. The work is back-breaking under the Mediterranean sun. Picture these women bent over furrows in the early morning light, their movements steady and rhythmic as they plant seeds that will feed their families months later. Their skin bronzes under endless exposure to sun and wind. Their hands become rough from handling tools and earth, but their labour provides the foundation upon which Roman prosperity rests. In Rome's bustling markets, poor women find another path to survival through the ancient art of trade. Imagine the gentle chaos of the Forum Boreum at dawn, where cattle and merchants call their wares, while women spread simple blankets on the ground, displaying humble goods for sale. Here sits a woman whose entire fortune consists of a few chickens, their eggs carefully arranged in a wicker basket. Her voice joins the morning chorus as she calls attention to her wares, competing with dozens of others whose survival depends upon attracting the attention of passing customers. The coin she earns, bronze sestertii worn smooth by countless hands, might buy bread for her children's supper or oil for their single lamp. Others specialise in simple foods prepared at home: bread baked in shared ovens, cheese made from their own goat's milk, vegetables grown in tiny gardens behind their cramped apartments. Their small profits accumulate slowly, coin by precious coin, each sale a small victory in the daily struggle to keep their families fed and sheltered. The market women develop their own community, sharing information about suppliers, warning each other about dishonest customers, offering help when illness or misfortune strikes. Their voices create a gentle counterpoint to the grander speeches of senators and orators, yet their economic activity forms the foundation upon which Rome's commercial empire rests. As daylight fades into evening across Rome, another world awakens in the city's taverns and drinking establishments. Here, Poor women find employment that offers immediate income but carries significant risks and social stigma. Picture the flickering light of oil lamps casting dancing shadows on rough wooden walls while women move between tables, serving wine and simple meals to labourers, soldiers and travellers. These women, often slaves or freed women with few other options, navigate a dangerous landscape where the promise of coins must be balanced against the threats posed by intoxicated customers and the general lawlessness that accompanies Rome's nightlife. Their work requires not just physical endurance, but the psychological strength to maintain dignity in circumstances that offer little protection or respect. Some serve as barmaids, their quick wit and sharp tongues helping them manage difficult customers while maximizing their tips. Others prepare simple foods in smoky kitchens, their skill with basic ingredients transforming cheap materials into meals that provide comfort to Rome's working poor. A few might even own small establishments, having accumulated enough capital through years of careful saving to achieve a measure of independence. The danger is ever present. Roman law offered little protection to women in such occupations, and the combination of alcohol, darkness, and desperation could turn violent without warning. Yet for many poor women, these risks represented the only path to economic survival in a society that offered few alternatives to those born without wealth or family connections. Between the extremes of wealth and poverty, a unique class of Roman women navigated their own complex reality. These were the freed women, former slaves who had earned or purchased their freedom and now faced the challenge of creating new lives without the security of either wealth or servitude. Picture a freed woman in the early morning light, standing in the doorway of a small shop she has managed to acquire through years of careful saving. Perhaps she learned weaving during her years of slavery, and now her skilled hands create cloth that she sells to customers who appreciate quality work at reasonable prices. The coins she earns belong entirely to her, a freedom so complete that it would have seemed impossible during her years of bondage. Freed women often maintained connections to their former owners' households, serving as paid craftswomen, midwives, or teachers for the children of families they once served as slaves. This relationship provided a measure of security while allowing them to develop their own economic independence. Their unique position, neither fully accepted by freeborn Romans nor constrained by slavery, required careful navigation of social expectations and personal ambition. Some freed women accumulated significant wealth through business ventures, particularly in trades considered appropriate for women. They might operate bakeries, textile workshops, or boarding houses that catered to Rome's constant stream of visitors and migrants. Their success challenged traditional assumptions about women's capabilities while remaining within socially acceptable boundaries. The most successful freed women sometimes became patronesses themselves, offering support and guidance to newly freed slaves or helping poor freeborn women establish small businesses. Their own experiences of powerlessness gave them particular empathy for others struggling to find their place in Roman society's complex hierarchy. For the most desperate women, those whose circumstances left them without family support, useful skills, or even basic respectability, Rome's economy offered employment that carried terrible risks. In the city's industrial districts, women worked in pottery workshops, where lead glazes slowly poisoned their systems, in fulling establishments where the ammonia used to clean cloth burned their lungs and skin, in tanning operations where the stench and chemicals created conditions barely compatible with human life. Picture these women in the harsh light of workshop fires, their movements mechanical as they repeat dangerous tasks hour after hour. Their bodies bear the marks of their labour, burns from hot clay, scars from sharp tools, the pale complexion and persistent cough that comes from working in poorly ventilated spaces filled with toxic fumes. Yet even in these desperate circumstances, women found ways to maintain their humanity and dignity. They shared food when someone fell ill, pooled resources to help each other through crises, and created informal networks of support that provided emotional and practical assistance when official help was unavailable. Across all social classes, Roman women's work followed patterns as ancient as the city itself. Their days began before dawn and ended long after sunset, filled with tasks both seen and invisible, valued and overlooked. Whether directing the work of others or labouring with their own hands, they contributed to an economic system that supported history's greatest empire. The wealthy woman checking her household accounts and the poor woman selling eggs in the forum were connected by invisible threads of mutual dependence. The elegant stola worn by a senator's wife began as wool sheared by rural women and spun by slaves. The bread that fed patrician banquets was baked by women whose names history never recorded, but whose skills fed a civilization. In workshops and villas, markets and estates, Roman women shaped their world through countless acts of labour, creativity and determination. Their work, whether celebrated or ignored, safe or dangerous, chosen or forced upon them by circumstance, formed the foundation upon which Roman society rested. Next we'll talk about religion and rituals. Now picture the soft glow of oil lamps flickering before household shrines as Roman women begin their days with whispered prayers and offerings of wine, honey and bread. In these quiet moments, before the city fully awakens to its daily bustle, we discover how Roman women served as the sacred bridge between the world of mortals and the realm of the gods. In the gentle pre-dawn light of a Roman home, imagine a woman moving softly through rooms, still wrapped in peaceful silence. Her bare feet make no sound on cool marble floors as she approaches the lararium, the household shrine that serves as the spiritual centre of her domain. Here, among small bronze figurines and painted images on the wall, she begins the most important ritual of her day. The Lares and Penates, those ancient guardian spirits who watched over Roman homes and families, await her morning devotions with patient divinity. The Lares, depicted as youthful dancers holding drinking horns and cups, represent the protective spirits of the household itself. The Penates, more solemn figures, guard the family's food stores and ensure that hunger never crosses the threshold of a pious home. Her offerings are simple but profound. A few drops of wine poured onto a small altar, a pinch of salt scattered like stardust, a piece of bread torn from the morning's fresh loaf. As the wine stains the marble and the bread crumbles between her fingers, she speaks in whispers that have echoed through Roman homes for centuries, prayers for her family's health, for her husband's success, for her children's safety in the day ahead. This daily ritual belongs uniquely to women. While Roman men might pray publicly in great temples or make dramatic sacrifices in forums filled with spectators, the intimate relationship between household and divine rested in feminine hands. Roman society understood with deep wisdom that the spiritual foundation of civilization lay not in grand public ceremonies, but in these quiet moments of domestic devotion. Picture her daughters learning at her side, their small hands mimicking her gestures as she teaches them the sacred words and proper offerings. This knowledge passes like a gentle flame from mother to daughter, an unbroken chain of feminine spirituality, stretching back to Rome's earliest days, when Romulus first marked the city's sacred boundaries. Roman women's spiritual lives followed the gentle rhythm of religious calendars that marked time with festivals, observances, and seasonal celebrations. Unlike the hurried pace of modern life, Roman time was punctuated by sacred pauses, days when normal work ceased and the community gathered to honour the gods who governed their destiny. On the calends of each month, the first day when the new moon appeared, Roman women had special responsibilities in announcing the sacred calendar to their households. Picture a Roman matron standing in her atrium, surrounded by slaves and family members, as she proclaims which days in the coming month would be devoted to religious observance. Her voice carries the authority of ancient tradition as she explains which gods would be honoured, what rituals must be performed, and how the household should prepare for upcoming festivals. The Ides of each month, that fateful middle day made famous by Caesar's assassination, found Roman women making special offerings to Jupiter, the king of gods. On these days, the Flamandilis, Jupiter's special priest, performed public sacrifices, but in homes throughout the city, women kindled special fires and prepared feast foods that honoured the Sky Father's benevolence. High above the Roman Forum, where marble columns catch the morning light like prayers made visible, stood the Temple of Vesta, home to Rome's most sacred fire and the 6 women whose lives were dedicated to keeping it burning. These were the Vestal Virgins, perhaps the most powerful and respected women in all of Roman society. Picture a young girl, perhaps only 6 or 7 years old, being led up the marble steps of Vesta's temple for the first time. Her small hand clutches that of the Pontifex Maximus, Rome's chief priest, as she prepares to leave behind the ordinary world of family and marriage for 30 years of sacred service. Her hair, which will never again be cut in the style of married women, falls in simple waves around shoulders that will bear the weight of Rome's spiritual security. The selection of a Vestal Virgin was surrounded by elaborate ritual and careful consideration. She must be born of free parents, both still living, with no physical defects or speech impediments that might interfere with her sacred duties. Most importantly, she must be a virgin, untouched by the complexities of marriage and motherhood that would divide her loyalty between family and state. Once chosen, she entered a life of extraordinary privilege balanced by equally extraordinary responsibility. The Vestal Virgins were the only Roman women who could own property independently, make wills, and give testimony in legal proceedings without a male guardian. They sat in places of honour at public games, their presence so sacred that condemned criminals who encountered a Vestal on their way to execution were immediately pardoned. But with these privileges came the terrible responsibility of maintaining Vesta's eternal flame. Should the sacred fire ever be extinguished through negligence, the guilty Vestal faced the most horrible punishment Roman law could devise, being buried alive in the Campus Celeratus, the field of evil, with only a small amount of bread, water, and oil to sustain her final hours. Picture the Vestals in the quiet hours of night duty, taking turns to tend the flame that represented Rome's eternal security. The temple's inner sanctum, forbidden to all men except the Pontifex Maximus, glows with gentle light as these women perform rituals older than Roman written history. Their whispered prayers rise with the smoke, carrying the hopes and fears of an entire civilization toward the listening gods. The first day of March brought one of the most joyful celebrations in the Roman religious calendar, the Matronalia, a festival dedicated to Juno Lucina, the goddess who guided women safely through childbirth. Picture Roman matrons throughout the city stirring early on this blessed morning, their hearts light with anticipation of a day devoted entirely to honouring their roles as wives and mothers. The celebration began at Juno's temple on the Esquiline Hill, where Roman women gathered in their finest stolas and most precious jewellery. The morning air fills with the soft rustle of silk and the gentle murmur of feminine voices as mothers from all social classes climb the marble steps together, united in their shared experience of bringing new life into the world. Inside the temple, wreathed in the sweet smoke of burning incense, the women make offerings of flowers and small gifts to the goddess who had protected them through the dangers of childbirth. Their prayers are deeply personal: gratitude for children safely delivered, pleas for future fertility, requests for protection during pregnancies yet to come. Some women untie their hair and rebraid it as an offering, symbolically giving the goddess a part of themselves in exchange for her continued protection. But the matronalia's true joy came in the afternoon, when Roman women returned to their homes to receive gifts from their husbands and daughters. Picture the warm glow of oil lamps illuminating family gatherings, where fathers present their wives with jewellery, fine fabrics, or precious perfumes, while children offer small tokens they have made with their own hands: clay figurines, woven bracelets, or simple drawings that speak of love more eloquently than the most expensive gifts. Slaves, too, participated in this gentle revolution of normal household order. On Matronalia, Roman matrons served meals to their female slaves, temporarily reversing the usual hierarchy in acknowledgement of the shared experiences that united all women regardless of social status. The sight of wealthy women ladling soup for their servants, laughing together over shared stories of children and childbirth, created moments of human connection that transcended the usual boundaries of Roman social order. In the depths of December, when winter's grip tightened on Rome and the nights stretched long and cold, Roman women gathered for one of their most mysterious and exclusive religious celebrations, the festival of Bona Dea, the good goddess. This was a ritual so sacred, so intensely feminine, that Roman law forbade any man from learning its details or witnessing its ceremonies. Picture the chosen venue, usually the house of a high-ranking magistrate, but transformed for one night into a temple devoted entirely to women's spiritual power. All images and statues of male gods are carefully covered with cloth, all male servants dismissed, and even male animals removed from the premises. This night belongs exclusively to women, and the goddess they honour permits no masculine presence to contaminate her mysteries. The matron hosting the festival, often the wife of a consul or praetor, welcomes women from across Rome's social spectrum. Wealthy patricians arrive in litters carried by female slaves, while poorer women walk through the cold streets, their stolas wrapped tightly against the winter air. All bring offerings for the goddess, wine, though they call it milk in deference to her preferences, honey cakes shaped like female figures, and flowers carefully preserved from autumn's last harvest. As the night deepens and wine loosens tongues normally constrained by Roman propriety, the women share stories and secrets that never reach masculine ears. They speak of childbirth's terrors and joys, of marriage's complex negotiations, of hopes for their children's futures and fears for their own mortality. In this sacred space, temporarily freed from the expectations and oversight of fathers and husbands, Roman women create bonds of sisterhood that transcend all social barriers. The rituals themselves remain shrouded in mystery. Ancient sources speak vaguely of sacred objects revealed only to initiates, of prayers offered in languages older than Latin, of ceremonies that connected Roman women to their most ancient goddesses. What we know for certain is that any man who attempted to spy on these rites faced death, and that the women who participated emerged strengthened in their sense of feminine solidarity and spiritual power. Beyond Rome's walls, in the ancient Greek settlements of southern Italy, Roman women of sufficient wealth and status could participate in even more profound mysteries, the rites of Ceres, known to Greeks as Demeter, that promised initiates blessed afterlife and communion with the divine during their earthly existence. Picture a small group of Roman matrons making the journey to the sanctuary at Cumae or Naples, their litters swaying gently along dusty roads as they travel towards spiritual transformation. These women have prepared for months, purifying their bodies through fasting, their minds through study of sacred texts, their souls through meditation and prayer. The mysteries themselves unfolded over several days in underground chambers lit only by torches and oil lamps. Initiates learned the secret story of Ceres' daughter Proserpina, stolen by Pluto to rule his underworld kingdom, and discovered in this ancient myth the promise that death was not the end of consciousness, but merely a transformation into different forms of existence. Roman women who participated in these mysteries returned home profoundly changed, carrying within themselves the secret knowledge that set them apart from their uninitiated sisters. They moved through their daily routines, managing households, raising children, fulfilling social obligations, with the quiet confidence of those who had looked beyond the veil of ordinary existence and seen the eternal truths that governed human destiny. Roman religion understood, with wisdom that modern societies sometimes forget, that the sacred feminine was not merely an abstract concept, but a living reality that manifested itself in the daily lives of mortal women. Every Roman mother who guided her children's moral development participated in the work of Juno, Queen of Heaven. Every wife who maintained her household's prosperity honoured Ceres, goddess of abundance. Every virgin who preserved her purity until marriage served Vesta, guardian of the sacred flame. This understanding gave Roman women's religious activities a weight and significance that extended far beyond personal devotion. When they tended household shrines, they literally maintained the spiritual foundations upon which Roman civilization rested. When they participated in public festivals, they performed essential civic duties that ensured the gods' continued favour toward the Roman people. When they gathered for feminine mysteries, they preserved ancient wisdom and created bonds of sisterhood that strengthened the entire social fabric. Picture an elderly Roman matron in the evening of her life, surrounded by daughters and granddaughters as she prepares to transfer the household's religious responsibilities to the next generation. Her weathered hands, which have offered countless prayers and prepared innumerable sacrifices, now guide younger fingers in these sacred gestures that connect mortal families to immortal protectors. Her voice, grown soft with age but still carrying the authority of decades of faithful service, speaks the ancient formulas that transform ordinary bread and wine into sacred offerings. In her words, past and future meet. The accumulated wisdom of countless grandmothers flows toward the bright promise of daughters yet to be born, ensuring that the sacred flame of feminine spirituality will continue burning long after her own light has joined the eternal stars. In temples and homes, in public festivals and secret mysteries, Roman women served as the living link between heaven and earth. Their prayers rose like incense toward listening gods. Their rituals maintained the sacred order that protected civilization itself, and their devotion ensured that the divine spark continued burning in the hearts of mortal families. Now we will explore the vast gulf that separated Roman women of different social classes, a divide as wide as the distance between the marble palaces of the Palatine Hill and the crowded tenements of the Subura below. Picture two women stirring to life as dawn breaks over the 7 hills. In a grand villa, silk curtains filter golden light across polished marble floors, while several miles away, in a cramped apartment 6 stories above a busy street, rough wooden shutters barely keep out the noise and dust of the city below. Their stories unfold in parallel, 2 lives shaped by the same empire, the same traditions, yet separated by circumstances as different as starlight and shadow. In the peaceful sanctuary of a patrician villa, imagine our wealthy matron awakening to the soft whisper of silk against skin as her personal slave draws back bed curtains of the finest Egyptian linen. The morning air carries the gentle scent of roses from private gardens and the distant splash of ornamental fountains that have trickled peacefully through the night. Her chamber is a study in elegant comfort, frescoed walls depicting scenes from Greek mythology, floors of polished marble inlaid with intricate mosaics, furniture crafted from rare woods and decorated with ivory and gold. The morning light streams through tall windows fitted with translucent sheets of alabaster, casting everything in a warm, honey-coloured glow that speaks of wealth accumulated over generations. As she rises, skilled hands immediately attend to her needs. One slave brings a silver basin filled with warm, perfumed water for washing, while another lays out garments chosen specifically for the day's activities. Her morning toilette is an elaborate ritual. Oils from distant provinces anoint her skin. Her hair is arranged in the latest fashion by hands trained from childhood in the beautician's arts, and jewellery worth more than most Romans earn in a lifetime adorns her neck and arms. The breakfast that awaits her in the villa's sunny atrium speaks of abundance and refinement. Fresh bread made from the finest flour, honey gathered from the family's own hives, cheese imported from the countryside estates, fruits that have travelled from across the Mediterranean to grace her table. She eats from dishes of silver and glass while fountains play nearby, and slaves stand ready to fulfill her smallest wish. Meanwhile, in the narrow confines of a 6th-floor apartment in one of Rome's towering insulae, our poor woman awakens to very different circumstances. Her dwelling consists of a single room shared with her husband and children, a space so small that sleeping, cooking, eating, and working all happen within the same cramped confines. The morning light that reaches her is filtered through a single small window. often blocked by laundry hanging from lines stretched between buildings. The air carries not the scent of roses, but the smell of cooking food, human waste, and the smoke from countless fires burning in the apartments below. The walls are thin wood and plaster, offering little insulation from either weather or the constant noise of neighbours living in equally cramped conditions. Her morning routine is governed by necessity rather than luxury. She washes with cold water from a communal fountain several flights below, her hands already rough from years of labour as she splashes her face and prepares for another day of work. There are no slaves to attend to her needs. Indeed, she may herself work as a servant for wealthier families, climbing down those dangerous wooden stairs before dawn to begin her daily labour. The breakfast she shares with her family is simple and practical. Coarse bread, perhaps a bit of olive oil, watered wine if the family budget allows such luxury. They eat from clay bowls with their hands, sitting on simple wooden stools around a table that doubles as workspace when the day's labour begins. Every morsel represents careful calculation, every coin saved through weeks of careful economy. The contrast between these women's living spaces reflects the enormous disparities in Roman society. Our wealthy matron moves through a villa that is essentially a private world, rooms opening onto garden courtyards where fountains play and exotic birds sing in golden cages. Her home spans multiple floors connected by marble staircases, with separate areas for public entertaining, private family life, and the complex operations of household management. Picture her gliding through a peristyle garden, where columns support a covered walkway decorated with painted vines and flowers. The garden itself is a masterpiece of landscape art. Carefully arranged shrubs and flowers, perhaps a small temple to household gods, benches of carved marble where she can sit in contemplative peace while planning her day's activities. Her villa includes libraries filled with scrolls, private baths with hot and cold running water, elaborate dining rooms where she can entertain dozens of guests, and workshops where skilled slaves create beautiful objects for the household's use. Every room serves a specific purpose, and the luxury of space allows for both privacy and grand entertaining as circumstances require. The insula where our poor woman lives tells a very different story. These towering apartment buildings, some reaching 6 or 7 stories high, housed Rome's working masses in conditions that grew more precarious with each ascending floor. The wealthy might rent the ground floor apartments with their easy access and relative safety, but poor families found themselves climbing ever higher, where rent was cheaper but dangers multiplied. Picture our poor woman carefully negotiating the narrow wooden stairs that provide the only access to her home. These stairs, worn smooth by countless feet and weakened by age and poor construction, creak ominously with each step. Fire is an ever-present threat in these wooden structures, heated by countless small braziers and oil lamps. Collapse is another fear. These buildings, constructed quickly and cheaply by profit-minded landlords, sometimes simply crumble without warning. Her single room must serve every need of family life. Cooking happens on a small brazier, whose smoke has no proper outlet, creating air that is often thick and difficult to breathe. Storage consists of wooden chests and clay vessels arranged along the walls. Privacy is impossible. The sounds of neighbours arguing, children crying, and life being lived at close quarters penetrate the thin walls at all hours. The differences in these women's circumstances become immediately visible in their clothing. Those external markers that instantly communicate social status to every observer in Rome's complex society. Our wealthy matron's wardrobe represents a small fortune invested in textile artistry and imported luxury. Her stolas are crafted from the finest materials the Roman world can provide. Silk that has travelled along trade routes from distant China, linen so finely woven that it feels like liquid against the skin, wool dyed with expensive pigments that create colours of unprecedented richness and depth, purple, extracted from murex shells at enormous cost, marks her highest rank. Deep blues created from precious lapis lazuli speak of wealth that can afford such extravagance for mere clothing. Picture her being dressed for a formal occasion, layer upon layer of exquisite fabric arranged by skilled hands to create silhouettes that speak of elegance and refinement. Her jewellery includes not just gold and silver, but precious stones from across the empire, pearls from British waters, emeralds from Egypt, sapphires from India. Even her pins and clasps are works of art, crafted by the finest metalworkers money can buy. Her poor counterpart owns perhaps 2 or 3 simple tunics, all made from coarse wool in practical browns and greys that hide stains and wear well. These garments are often mended, carefully patched where fabric has worn thin. Edges rebound when fraying threatens to make the clothing unwearable. A single decent stola for special occasions represents months of saving, and even then it cannot approach the quality of materials available to wealthy women. Her jewellery, if any exists, consists of simple bronze pieces or clay beads made by local craftsmen. More often, she adorns herself with flowers gathered from roadside ditches or simple ribbons woven from scraps of coloured thread. Yet even in poverty, Roman women understood the importance of appearance, and she arranges her limited wardrobe with care and dignity that transcends material constraints. The meals that sustain these 2 women throughout their days reveal perhaps the starkest contrasts in their living conditions. Our wealthy matron enjoys access to foods that represent the best of Roman agricultural science and international trade networks. Her morning meal might include bread made from the finest wheat, baked in her own household ovens by skilled slaves who understand the precise arts of fermentation and heat control. Honey comes from her own estates, where bees create sweetness from flower nectar in countryside air, unpolluted by urban smoke. Fresh fruits arrive regularly from family properties, grapes still dewy from morning harvests, figs that were ripening on trees just days before reaching her table. Picture her midday meal served in a cool dining room where frescoed walls depict pastoral scenes, and gentle breezes carry the scent of garden herbs. The table groans under the weight of abundance, roasted meats seasoned with spices from distant provinces, vegetables prepared in exotic sauces, wines whose vintage years mark harvests from the family's finest vineyards. She eats with implements of silver, drinks from cups of glass so fine that light passes through them like captured sunbeams. Her poor sister's meals tell a different story, one of careful rationing and creative preparation designed to extract maximum nutrition from minimal resources. Her daily bread is coarse and dark, made from grain that includes cheaper ingredients like barley and even bean flour to stretch expensive wheat. This bread must satisfy hunger for long hours of physical labour, and every crumb is precious. Her meals centre around simple porridge made from whatever grain she can afford, flavoured with vegetables when available, and occasionally enriched with small amounts of cheese or olive oil. Meat is a rare luxury reserved for festivals or special celebrations when the family's budget can accommodate such extravagance. More often, she creates filling meals from beans and vegetables, using herbs gathered from roadsides and wasteland to add flavour to otherwise monotonous fare. Water, rather than wine, serves as her primary beverage, drawn from public fountains and carefully boiled when fuel permits such luxury. The wine she occasionally enjoys is heavily watered and of the cheapest quality, but even this represents a small celebration in a life where most pleasures must be carefully budgeted. When illness threatens, the disparities between wealthy and poor women become matters of life and death. Our prosperous matron has access to the finest medical care Roman civilization can provide. Physicians trained in Greek medical schools, surgeons skilled in complex procedures, midwives whose expertise comes from attending the births of noble families for generations. Picture her private chambers transformed into a medical sanctuary when illness strikes. Skilled hands check her pulse and examine her complexion by the light of expensive oil lamps. Medicines compounded from rare ingredients, opium from distant poppies, herbs gathered from specific mountainsides, minerals ground to powder by master apothecaries, arrive to ease her discomfort and promote healing. Her physician might prescribe rest in specially prepared rooms where the air is purified with burning herbs and the light carefully controlled to promote recovery. Skilled slaves attend her constantly, monitoring her condition and adjusting treatments according to the physician's detailed instructions. Recovery includes carefully planned diets designed to restore strength gradually, and convalescence in garden settings where fresh air and peaceful surroundings support the healing process. When childbirth approaches, she can afford the services of the most experienced midwives, women whose skill has been proven through years of attending successful deliveries. These experts bring not only knowledge but supplies of the finest quality, clean linens, sharp instruments made by master metalworkers, and medicines to ease pain and prevent the infections that kill so many women in childbirth. Our poor woman faces medical crises with far fewer resources and much greater dangers. When illness strikes, she may rely on folk remedies passed down through generations of women, herbal teas made from plants gathered in countryside expeditions, poultices created from common ingredients, and the healing wisdom of neighbours who have survived similar afflictions. Her childbirth experiences unfold in circumstances that would horrify wealthier women. The same cramped room where her family lives must serve as delivery chamber, with perhaps an experienced neighbourhood woman serving as midwife. Clean water may be scarce, proper instruments rare, and pain relief limited to whatever herbs can be affordably obtained or gathered from wild places. Yet even in these harsh circumstances, poor women create networks of mutual support that provide care and comfort when professional medical help is unavailable. They share knowledge about healing herbs, pool resources to help neighbours through medical crises, and offer the kind of emotional support that money cannot buy, sitting through long nights with sick children, sharing food when illness prevents work, and maintaining hope when circumstances seem desperate. Perhaps the most significant difference between wealthy and poor Roman women lay not in their material circumstances, but in their ability to influence the world around them. Our patrician matron, despite legal limitations on women's public roles, wielded considerable informal power through her family connections, social networks, and economic resources. Picture her receiving morning visitors in her elegant atrium, other wealthy women seeking advice on marriage arrangements for their children, men of business hoping to gain access to her husband's political influence, even senators who value her opinion on matters of social policy. Her words carry weight because they are backed by wealth, family prestige, and the complex web of obligations that bind Roman elite society together. She might influence her husband's political decisions through private conversations in their bedchamber, shape her children's futures through careful selection of tutors and marriage partners, or affect the lives of hundreds of people through her management of family estates and urban properties. Her charitable activities, providing dowries for poor girls, supporting temples and public works, offering patronage to artists and writers, create ripple effects that extend far beyond her immediate household. Our poor woman exercises a different kind of influence, more immediate, more personal, but no less real within its sphere. Her neighbourhood looks to her for practical wisdom about survival in difficult circumstances. She might serve as unofficial midwife, mediator of disputes, or keeper of community knowledge about which employers pay fairly and which landlords maintain decent housing. Her influence extends through networks of friendship and mutual aid that provide the social safety net keeping poor families from complete destitution. She teaches skills to younger women, shares information about work opportunities, and helps organize the informal cooperation that allows poor communities to survive in a society that offers them little official support. Evening reflections. 2 worlds, 1 city. As evening falls across Rome, and oil lamps begin to flicker in windows from the Palatine to the Subura, these 2 women prepare for rest in circumstances that reflect the enormous gulf dividing Roman society. Our wealthy matron retires to chambers of silk and marble, her day's concerns focused on managing abundance and wielding influence within Rome's highest social circles. Her poor sister climbs those precarious wooden stairs to a cramped apartment where tomorrow's challenge is, earning enough to buy food, keeping her children healthy, avoiding the countless dangers that threaten poor urban families, will require all her strength and ingenuity to overcome. Yet both women share common experiences that transcend their material differences. Both love their children with fierce devotion. Both worry about their families' futures. Both find ways to create meaning and dignity within the circumstances life has imposed upon them. Both participate in the religious traditions that connect all Romans to their gods. Both understand the importance of family honour. Both navigate the complex expectations that Roman society places upon women of every social class. In villas and tenements, in abundance and scarcity, Roman women created lives of purpose and meaning within the opportunities their circumstances allowed. Their stories remind us that human dignity and strength of spirit flourish under all conditions, and that the bonds connecting women across social boundaries often prove stronger than the walls that seem to divide them. Next, we enter the complex world of Roman legal tradition, a realm where women lived within carefully defined boundaries that both protected and constrained their lives in ways both subtle and profound. Picture the gentle morning scene in a Roman villa's tablinum, that private study where scrolls of law and family documents rest in careful order on polished wooden shelves. Here, a Roman father sits with his grown daughter, explaining the legal realities that will shape her entire life. His voice is patient and kind, but the words he speaks reveal a world where women's capabilities are acknowledged even as their independence remains forever circumscribed by ancient tradition. From the moment of her birth until the day of her death, every Roman woman lived under the protective shadow of male guardianship, a legal concept called tutela that wrapped around her life like silk threads, beautiful and confining in equal measure. This wasn't born of cruelty or deliberate oppression, but from Roman society's deep belief that women, while capable and cherished, required masculine guidance to navigate the complex world of legal and financial affairs. Picture a young Roman woman on the morning of her wedding, standing in her father's atrium as he formally transfers her guardianship to her new husband. The ceremony is gentle and dignified. She wears white and carries flowers, surrounded by family members who shower her with blessings and good wishes. Yet within this beautiful ritual lies a legal reality. She's passing from one form of protection to another, never to stand fully independent under Roman law. Her tutor, whether father, husband, or appointed guardian, becomes her legal representative in all formal matters. She cannot make a will without his approval, cannot buy or sell significant property without his consent, cannot appear in court as her own advocate regardless of her intelligence or education. These limitations follow her through all the seasons of her life, as constant as the sunrise and as unchangeable as the marble foundations of Roman temples. Yet this guardianship was rarely the harsh domination it might appear to modern eyes. Picture instead the quiet conversations between husband and wife in their private chambers, where she presents carefully reasoned arguments about family finances, property investments, or legal strategies. Her tutor may hold the formal authority, but her wisdom and judgment often guide his decisions. The law recognizes his power, but daily life acknowledges her influence. Within the gentle constraints of tutela lay one of Roman law's most interesting contradictions. Women could own substantial property even as they remained under guardianship for its management. This created a complex dance of ownership and control that required both legal sophistication and personal diplomacy to navigate successfully. Imagine a Roman woman inheriting vast estates from her father, rolling hills dotted with olive groves, vineyards that produce wine for Rome's finest tables, urban properties that generate steady rental income. The law recognizes her absolute ownership of these assets. They belong to her as completely as if she were a freeborn Roman male. Yet she cannot sell a single vineyard, lease a single apartment, or collect a single rent payment without her guardian's formal approval. This arrangement created relationships of mutual dependence that could work beautifully or become sources of endless frustration, depending on the personalities and wisdom of those involved. A thoughtful guardian understood that his ward's prosperity benefited the entire family and worked to maximize her property's value through careful management and strategic decisions. But a foolish or selfish guardian could squander a woman's inheritance through poor judgment or deliberate exploitation. Picture a Roman matron in her private study, carefully reviewing scrolls that detail her property holdings and income. Her knowledge of these matters may far exceed her guardian's understanding, yet she must present her insights as gentle suggestions rather than direct commands. Her words are wrapped in courtesy and deference, but her meaning is clear to those who listen carefully. The wise guardian learns to value such counsel, understanding that his formal authority is most effectively exercised when guided by her practical wisdom. Some women found creative ways to exercise more direct control over their assets. By carefully choosing guardians who were sympathetic to their wishes, perhaps elderly male relatives grateful for the honour of guardianship but uninterested in day-to-day management, they could effectively direct their own financial affairs while maintaining legal propriety. The Forum Romanum, where senators debated the great issues of state and citizens gathered to hear the speeches that shaped imperial policy, remained forever closed to women's direct participation. Roman law was absolute in this regard. Women could not vote in popular assemblies, could not stand for political office, could not address the Senate or speak in courts of law, except in the most limited circumstances. Picture the morning scene as Rome's political elite gather for another day of debate and decision-making. The marble steps of temples and basilicas echo with the voices of men discussing war and peace, taxation, and public works. The complex diplomacy required to govern territories stretching from Britain to Egypt. Among all these voices, not one belongs to a woman, regardless of her intelligence, education, or stake in the decisions being made. This exclusion was so complete that Roman women were forbidden even to witness certain political proceedings. The sacred boundaries that protected masculine political space were as real and impermeable as the walls of temples dedicated to male gods. A woman who somehow gained access to these forbidden areas risked not just social condemnation but religious pollution. Her presence was believed to contaminate the sacred nature of political decision-making. Yet Roman society acknowledged what the law refused to recognize, that women possessed political wisdom and deserved influence over policies that affected their families and communities. This created a parallel system of feminine political engagement that operated through private channels and personal relationships rather than public forums and formal procedures. In the soft candlelight of evening dinner parties, in the quiet intimacy of bedchambers, in the social gatherings where Rome's elite families mingled and formed alliances, women exercised political influence that was no less real for being unofficial and unacknowledged by law. Picture a Roman matron hosting an elegant dinner party in her villa's finest triclinium. The conversation flows as freely as the wine, touching on everything from military campaigns in distant provinces to proposed changes in taxation policy. Her male guests, senators, magistrates, wealthy businessmen with government contracts, speak freely in her presence, valuing her opinions even as they cannot formally acknowledge her political wisdom. She moves through these gatherings with the skill of a master diplomat, listening carefully to different perspectives, asking thoughtful questions that guide conversations toward productive conclusions, and offering insights that help her guests see complex issues from new angles. When the evening ends and these men return to their formal political roles, they carry with them ideas and perspectives that originated in feminine wisdom, though the law requires that credit go elsewhere. Roman mothers wielded perhaps the most lasting political influence through their role in shaping the next generation of leaders. In the quiet hours of childhood education, they instilled values and perspectives that would guide their sons' political careers for decades to come. The senators who debated imperial policy had learned their first lessons about justice, mercy, and good governance from women whose names never appeared in political records, but whose influence shaped the character of Roman leadership. Some women pushed against these boundaries more directly, though always within socially acceptable limits. Wealthy women could finance political campaigns, provide venues for unofficial political gatherings, or use their social networks to build support for particular candidates or policies. They became patron saints of political causes, lending their moral authority and social prestige to movements they supported. Roman marriage law created another complex arena where women navigated between legal limitations and practical influence. The choice between different types of marriage, cum manu, where the wife passed completely into her husband's legal authority, or sine manu, where she remained under her birth family's guardianship, could dramatically affect a woman's legal and economic position throughout her life. Picture a Roman father consulting with his daughter and her prospective husband about the legal structure of their upcoming marriage. These conversations required delicate balancing of romantic desires, family interests, and long-term legal strategies. A marriage sine manu allows the woman to inherit from her birth family and maintain some independence from her husband's authority, but it also means her children belong legally to their father's family rather than having claims on her property. Divorce, while socially discouraged, remained legally simple for Roman women, at least in theory. Either spouse could end a marriage by declaring their intention to do so, and wives could initiate divorce proceedings just as easily as husbands. Yet the practical consequences of divorce fell more heavily on women, who might lose access to their children and face social stigma that could make remarriage difficult. Wealthy women learned to navigate these legal complexities with the same skill they applied to managing vast estates. They negotiated marriage contracts that protected their interests, chose guardians who supported their goals, and structured their property holdings to maximize their influence over family affairs. Within the constraints of Roman law, they created lives of considerable autonomy and power. Though Roman women could not generally appear in court as advocates, exceptional circumstances sometimes opened legal doors that remained normally closed. Women could speak in court to defend their own interests or those of close family members, and history records several instances of women whose eloquence and legal knowledge allowed them to succeed in these rare public forums. Picture the unusual scene of a Roman courtroom where a woman stands to address judges and lawyers about matters affecting her family's interests. Her voice, rarely heard in such formal settings, carries the weight of careful preparation and deep knowledge of legal precedent. She speaks with quiet authority, understanding that this rare opportunity to advocate publicly must not be wasted through emotional displays or inadequate preparation. These exceptional women often became informal legal advisors to other women facing similar challenges. In the privacy of domestic settings, they shared knowledge about legal procedures, property rights, and strategies for protecting family interests within the constraints of Roman law. Their wisdom, gained through hard experience in masculine legal systems, became a precious resource for women seeking to maximize their influence within traditional boundaries. As the Roman Empire evolved from republic to principate, women's legal position underwent gradual but significant changes. The old restrictions of tutela began to relax, particularly for women who had fulfilled their reproductive duties by bearing multiple children. The ius liberorum, the right of children, granted certain legal privileges to mothers who had contributed to Rome's population needs. Picture an older Roman matron who has successfully raised several children to adulthood, Consulting with legal advisors about her expanded rights and privileges, she may now make certain financial decisions without guardian approval, write her will with greater freedom, and exercise property rights that would have been impossible for her younger self. These legal advances recognize her proven wisdom and social contributions while maintaining the formal framework of male authority. Wealthy women, in particular, began to accumulate legal privileges that approached genuine independence. They could choose their own guardians from among male relatives, effectively selecting men who would approve their decisions rather than impose unwanted restrictions. Some even gained the right to change guardians if their current protector proved unsympathetic to their goals. Roman women developed remarkable skill in working within legal limitations to achieve their personal and family objectives. Rather than directly challenging laws they could not change, they became master strategists in using existing legal frameworks to maximize their influence and protect their interests. Picture a Roman woman consulting with legal experts about the best way to structure her estate to benefit her children, while minimizing her husband's control over the inheritance. These conversations require deep understanding of property law, inheritance rights, and the complex interactions between different legal mechanisms. Her questions reveal sophisticated legal thinking that would credit any formally trained advocate. Some women became unofficial legal advisors within their social circles, sharing knowledge about property rights, marriage law, and inheritance strategies. Their homes became informal law schools where women learned to navigate complex legal systems through practical wisdom rather than formal education. Evening reflections, power within boundaries. As evening shadows lengthen across Rome and oil lamps flicker in private studies where legal documents await tomorrow's attention, we see how Roman women created meaningful lives within legal systems that seemed designed to constrain them. Their stories revealed the eternal human capacity to find freedom within limitation, to exercise power within apparent powerlessness, to create influence where formal authority is denied. The Roman woman reviewing her property holdings by lamplight, the mother counseling her son on political strategy, the matron hosting gatherings where unofficial policy is made, all demonstrate how legal boundaries, while real and sometimes frustrating, need not prevent the exercise of wisdom, influence, and practical authority. Their legacy reminds us that formal legal rights, while important, represent only one measure of human agency and influence. Within every legal system, regardless of its apparent limitations, we now are going to step into the rarefied world of imperial women. Those extraordinary figures who, despite all legal limitations, shaped the destiny of an empire through wisdom, ambition, and the subtle arts of feminine power. Picture the soft glow of oil lamps in the private apartments of the Palatine Hill, where women whose names echo through history once sat in quiet consultation with the most powerful men of their age. Here, in chambers decorated with the finest art the empire could provide, we discover how Roman women, at the very pinnacle of society, transformed legal constraint into political influence and personal limitation into imperial legacy. In the peaceful hours before dawn in the imperial palace, imagine the gentle rustle of silk as Livia Augusta rises from her bed to begin another day of ruling an empire from the shadows. She moves with the measured grace of one who understands that every gesture, every word, every decision carries weight that can alter the course of history itself. Livia, wife of Augustus and mother to the future Emperor Tiberius, embodied the paradox of feminine power in Roman society. Officially, she held no political office, commanded no legions, addressed no Senate assemblies. Yet for more than 50 years, she wielded influence that shaped imperial policy, determined succession, and guided Rome through its transformation from republic to empire. Picture her in her private study, scrolls of correspondence spread across polished tables as she maintains relationships with governors across the empire, senators whose loyalty must be carefully cultivated, and foreign dignitaries whose goodwill serves Roman interests. Her letters, written in her own elegant hand, carry no official authority, yet command immediate attention from recipients who understand that her favour can make or destroy careers. The morning light filtering through alabaster windows illuminates a woman whose intelligence was legendary, even among her contemporaries. Ancient historians, despite their general reluctance to credit women with political acumen, described Livia as Augustus's most trusted advisor, the one person whose counsel he sought on matters of state policy, military strategy, and imperial succession. Her influence operated through the most intimate channels of imperial life. In the quiet privacy of the imperial bedchamber, she discussed with Augustus the complex challenges of governing territories stretching from Britain to Egypt. Her insights, gained through careful cultivation of information networks that spanned the known world, often proved more valuable than official reports from provincial governors and military commanders. Livia understood that feminine power in Rome required different strategies than masculine authority. She could not command through force or intimidate through legal authority, so she mastered the arts of persuasion, alliance building, and patient cultivation of long-term influence. Her patronage supported artists, philosophers, and public works projects that enhanced both her reputation and her family's legacy. Picture her presiding over elegant dinner parties, where Rome's elite gathered not just for entertainment but for the subtle business of imperial politics. Her table became an unofficial senate where policy was discussed, alliances formed, and the complex business of governing an empire conducted through conversation that seemed casual but was actually carefully orchestrated. A generation later, another woman would push the boundaries of feminine power even further, though ultimately at great personal cost. Agrippina the Younger, great-granddaughter of Augustus and mother of the future Emperor Nero, approached imperial influence with an ambition that shocked even Romans accustomed to powerful women. Imagine her in the years following her marriage to Emperor Claudius, moving through the imperial palace with the confidence of one who sees no limit to her potential influence. Her beauty was legendary, but it was her intelligence and ruthless political calculation that made her truly formidable. Unlike Livia, who worked carefully within traditional boundaries, Agrippina seemed determined to transcend them entirely. Picture the scene as she accompanies Claudius to Senate meetings, something no imperial wife had done before. The senators, accustomed to conducting business free from feminine observation, must now consider that their words and votes are being witnessed by a woman whose son stands next in line for imperial succession. Her presence transforms the political dynamics of every gathering, creating new possibilities and new dangers. Agrippina's influence extended into areas traditionally reserved for emperors themselves. She appeared on coins, an honour previously granted only to male rulers and goddesses. She received foreign ambassadors in formal audiences, participated directly in diplomatic negotiations, and made policy decisions that affected millions of people across the empire. Her private chambers became alternate centres of imperial power where senators, governors, and foreign dignitaries sought audiences that could advance their careers or protect their interests. The soft murmur of political conversation in these silk-draped rooms often proved more significant than the formal proceedings of the Senate or the Emperor's official council meetings. Yet Agrippina's story also reveals the dangers that accompanied such unprecedented feminine power. Her ambition ultimately created enemies among those who felt threatened by a woman's direct exercise of imperial authority. The same qualities that enabled her remarkable influence also contributed to conflicts that would eventually lead to her downfall and death. Picture her in her final years, still beautiful but marked by the strain of constant political maneuvering, still influential but increasingly aware that her power depended on relationships that could shift without warning. Her story serves as both inspiration and cautionary tale about the possibilities and perils that awaited women who dare to grasp power directly rather than exercise it through traditional channels. Beyond the borders of Rome itself, another woman was simultaneously demonstrating how feminine intelligence and charisma could challenge even Rome's imperial might. Cleopatra, the seventh of Egypt, the last pharaoh of an ancient dynasty, understood that her kingdom's survival depended on her ability to form alliances with Rome's most powerful men. Picture her first arrival in Rome as Julius Caesar's honoured guest, her royal barge moving slowly up the Tiber, while crowds gather along the riverbanks to witness this legendary queen, whose beauty and wisdom were already the subject of countless stories. Her presence in Rome represented something unprecedented, a foreign woman who could negotiate with Roman leaders as an equal rather than a supplicant. Cleopatra's influence in Rome operated through different channels than that of Roman women. She could not work within the domestic sphere or build influence through family connections. Instead, she relied on intellectual brilliance, cultural sophistication, and personal magnetism to create relationships that served both her romantic interests and her political goals. In the elegant villa Caesar provided for her residence, imagine evening gatherings where Rome's intellectual elite came to meet this woman who spoke 9 languages, wrote treatises on mathematics and philosophy, and commanded one of the ancient world's wealthiest kingdoms. Her conversations revealed knowledge of literature, science, and statecraft that impressed even Romans, who prided themselves on their cultural superiority. Her relationship with Caesar, and later with Mark Antony, scandalized Roman society partly because it challenged assumptions about feminine power and foreign influence. Here was a woman who negotiated treaties, commanded naval fleets, and ruled millions of subjects, yet operated within the intimate sphere of romantic relationships with Rome's most powerful men. Picture her participating in strategic planning sessions where the future of the Mediterranean world was debated. Her voice, speaking with the authority of ancient pharaonic tradition and practical governing experience, offered perspectives that purely Roman councillors could not provide. The maps spread across polished tables showed territories where her knowledge and influence could prove crucial to Roman success. Cleopatra's story reveals both the possibilities and limitations that confronted women seeking to influence Roman power from outside traditional Roman social structures. Her intelligence and charisma created genuine political partnerships with Caesar and Antony, Yet these relationships ultimately depended on the continued success and favour of her Roman allies. The final chapters of her life, played out against the backdrop of civil war and imperial succession, demonstrate how even the most powerful women remained vulnerable to changes in political fortune beyond their control. Yet her legacy endured long after her death, inspiring countless stories about feminine power, intelligence, and the eternal struggle between love and political necessity. These extraordinary women succeeded by mastering what we might call the architecture of indirect power, understanding how to build influence through relationships, information networks, cultural patronage, and the careful cultivation of reputation and respect. Their methods differed from masculine approaches to power, but proved no less effective within their specific contexts. Picture Livia's daily routine as a masterpiece of political choreography. Her morning audiences with senators' wives, her afternoon consultations with Greek philosophers, her evening entertainment of foreign dignitaries. Each activity served multiple purposes in building and maintaining the complex web of relationships that supported her influence. These women understood that information was power, and they developed sophisticated networks for gathering intelligence about political developments, military campaigns, and social trends throughout the empire. Their private correspondence reveals knowledge of events and personalities that often exceeded what was available to official government sources. They also grasped the importance of cultural influence in shaping political outcomes. Through patronage of artists, architects, and writers, they helped create the cultural narratives that legitimized their families' power and promoted their political goals. The buildings they commissioned, the festivals they sponsored, and the artistic works they supported all served as forms of political communication that reached audiences far beyond the formal channels of imperial authority. Yet these women's stories also reveal the significant costs that accompanied their extraordinary influence. The same ambition and intelligence that enabled their political success also created dangers and limitations that their male counterparts rarely faced. Picture Agrippina in her private moments, perhaps sitting alone in her chamber as evening shadows lengthen across marble floors. The weight of constant political calculation shows in her posture, the need to evaluate every word, every gesture, every relationship for its potential impact on her son's future and her own survival. The price of power for women in her position included a kind of perpetual vigilance that few men needed to maintain. These women lived with the understanding that their influence depended on maintaining relationships that could shift without warning. A husband's death, a son's ingratitude, a political miscalculation, or simply the natural evolution of imperial politics could destroy decades of careful alliance building in a matter of months. Their stories also reveal the personal sacrifices that extraordinary ambition demanded. Livia's relationship with her son Tiberius was complicated by her political maneuvering on his behalf. Agrippina's fierce advocacy for Nero ultimately contributed to conflicts that destroyed their family bonds. Cleopatra's political alliances required her to navigate romantic relationships within a framework of international diplomacy that left little room for purely personal feelings. Despite the challenges and ultimate limitations they faced, these women left legacies that transcended their individual lives and influenced Roman imperial tradition for generations to come. Their examples showed that feminine intelligence and ambition could operate effectively within imperial politics, even if they could not fundamentally alter the legal and social structures that constrained women's formal authority. Picture young Roman women of later generations hearing stories about Livia's wisdom, Agrippina's ambition, and Cleopatra's courage. These narratives provided models of feminine possibility that went far beyond traditional domestic roles, inspiring women to seek education, cultivate political awareness, and understand their potential for influence even within constrained circumstances. The cultural impact of these women extended beyond the Roman world itself. Their stories, preserved in historical accounts and literary works, continued to inspire and caution women seeking power and influence in very different historical contexts. They became archetypal figures representing both the possibilities and perils that await women who dare to challenge traditional limitations on feminine authority. As evening descends over Rome, and the last light fades from the windows of the imperial palaces, we reflect on how these extraordinary women navigated the eternal tension between formal limitation and actual influence. Their lives remind us that power takes many forms, and that intelligence, charisma, and strategic thinking can sometimes transcend legal and social boundaries that seem absolute. Picture them in their private moments, Livia reviewing correspondence that connects her to every corner of the empire, Agrippina planning strategies that will shape her son's reign, Cleopatra studying maps that show the territories where her influence could tip the balance of world events. In these quiet scenes of feminine planning and reflection, we see how individual women can impact the course of history, even when formal authority remains beyond their reach. Their stories teach us that power is not simply about holding office or commanding armies, but about understanding human nature, building relationships, gathering information, and exercising influence in ways that achieve meaningful results. These women mastered arts of persuasion and alliance building that proved as effective as more direct forms of authority, and their legacies demonstrate the enduring impact of intelligence applied with wisdom and strategic patience. In palace chambers and private councils, through whispered conversations and carefully cultivated alliances, these remarkable women shaped the destiny of the ancient world's greatest empire. Their lives remind us that true power often operates beyond the boundaries of formal authority, and that feminine wisdom and ambition can find expression even within societies that seem designed to constrain them. In ancient Rome, motherhood was not only a personal journey, but a duty tied to the survival of families, of legacies, and of the empire itself. Every Roman woman knew the dangers of childbirth. Without modern medicine, even a healthy pregnancy could turn perilous in a single night. Midwives, known as obstetrices, were often older women who had gained experience through years of practice. They carried satchels filled with herbs like silphium or pennyroyal, used for easing labour pains or helping with delivery. They whispered blessings to the household gods, offering prayers to Juno Lucina, the goddess of childbirth. And yet, even with skilled midwives, danger lingered. Infections, prolonged labour, or breech births often ended in death. Ancient writers like Soranus of Ephesus, a physician who studied gynecology, recorded instructions for handling difficult births, but his knowledge was far from universal. For many Roman women, giving birth meant facing mortality head-on, with bravery born out of necessity. Despite the risks, Roman society encouraged women to have many children. For the elite, children secured the family's political future. Sons carried forward the name, while daughters, through marriage, forged alliances with other noble households. A woman's value was often measured in the heirs she produced, and barrenness could bring shame. For poorer families, children meant survival of a different kind. A daughter might help with weaving or selling goods in the market, while sons worked the fields or assisted in trades. Each child was another pair of hands, another measure of security against hunger or hardship. To raise a large family was both a social expectation and a practical necessity. The state itself reinforced this expectation. Under Augustus, laws were passed to encourage marriage and childbirth, rewarding families with many children while penalizing those who remained childless. In the eyes of the empire, the birth of Roman citizens was a matter of national strength. But alongside joy was constant grief. Infant mortality was heartbreakingly common. Many children did not live beyond their first year, succumbing to illness, malnutrition, or accidents. Inscriptions on tombstones tell of tiny graves carved with tender words from grieving parents. Mothers often faced the cruel reality of raising many children, only to bury some before they reached adulthood. Still, women endured. They nurtured the living even as they mourned the lost. They found strength in rituals, offering prayers to the gods for protection, or leaving small tokens at household shrines. Hope and sorrow lived side by side in the Roman home. Motherhood in Rome was not only about survival, it was also about resilience. Women bore the burden of grief quietly, finding comfort in community and family. Older women, having endured their own losses, became sources of wisdom for younger mothers. Through shared experience, they passed on not only knowledge, but also strength. Even among the elite, women shaped history through motherhood. Livia, the wife of Augustus, was celebrated for her role as matriarch of the imperial family. Agrippina the Younger fought fiercely for the future of her son Nero, though her story ended in tragedy. Their influence, though indirect, shaped the very course of Rome's empire. For ordinary women, resilience was quieter, but no less powerful. To rise each morning, to prepare food, to care for children, to face the risks of childbirth again and again. This was the everyday heroism of Roman mothers. To be a mother in ancient Rome was to live with constant tension, the expectation of creating life, and the ever-present shadow of death. It was a role filled with both tenderness and struggle, endurance and sacrifice. And yet, through their courage, the empire endured. Rome may be remembered for its emperors, its armies, and its monuments. But beneath it all were the mothers, millions of women whose quiet strength carried generations forward, even in the face of unthinkable risk. If a Roman woman lived beyond the risks of childhood, survived the dangers of childbirth, and endured the hardships of daily life, she might reach a stage few women of her time experienced: old age. To grow old in Rome was in itself a quiet victory. In their later years, women often became the respected anchors of their households. While younger women were defined by their fertility and marriages, older women carried wisdom earned through decades of survival. They became teachers, not only of domestic skills like weaving, cooking, and managing a household, but of resilience itself. A grandmother might sit in a shaded courtyard, spinning wool as she told stories to her grandchildren. She passed on family history, lessons about faith, and guidance about marriage. Her voice, softer but steadier, held weight, for she had lived long enough to see the rise and fall of many seasons, and perhaps even the reigns of multiple emperors. Among the wealthy, older women sometimes wielded considerable influence. Freed from the constant burden of childbearing, and with grown sons to represent them in politics, they often became the quiet advisors behind powerful men. Livia, even in her later years, was known for her counsel to Augustus, shaping the stability of Rome's first imperial dynasty. For poorer women, old age meant continued work, though often lighter tasks. They helped raise grandchildren, managed small gardens, or worked as midwives, passing their skills to the next generation. Their role shifted from survival to guidance, ensuring that the young endured as they once had. Old age also deepened women's role in religion. They tended household shrines with devotion, offering prayers for the health and safety of their descendants. Some joined cults, or participated in festivals that honoured deities of family and fertility. For elder women, faith became a source of strength, a bridge between their past and the uncertain future of those they would one day leave behind. But old age in Rome was not without hardship. Bodies worn by years of labour carried scars of survival. Arthritis, poor eyesight, and the toll of repeated childbirth often left women frail. Medical care was limited, and the elderly relied heavily on family support. A woman without children or close kin risked isolation, surviving only through the charity of neighbours or religious communities. Despite these challenges, older women often gained something their younger selves had been denied: respect. Their authority grew as matriarchs, and their advice was heeded. When they passed away, inscriptions on tombstones sometimes praised them not for beauty or wealth, but for devotion, piety, and endurance. To live into old age was to embody the resilience of Rome itself, weathered by hardship, yet enduring. And so, in the twilight of their lives, Roman women found a different kind of strength: the power of memory, of guidance, and of legacy. Through their stories, their rituals, and their quiet presence, they remained the unseen pillars of family and empire alike. As our journey through the lives of Roman women comes to an end, let us pause for a moment of quiet thought. The story of Rome is often told through the deeds of emperors, generals, and senators. Yet behind the marble arches and triumphal processions were women whose names were rarely carved into stone. They were daughters and mothers, wives and widows, priestesses and midwives. Their work was not sung by poets, nor etched on great monuments, and yet it sustained the very world those monuments celebrated. They lived in the hum of courtyards, in the weaving of wool, in the whispers of prayer before a household shrine. They endured the pain of childbirth, the sorrow of loss, and the quiet pride of raising children who would carry Rome into tomorrow. Their strength was measured not in battles won, but in lives carried forward through resilience and care. Some, like Livia and Agrippina, brushed the edges of power, leaving marks upon history's pages. But most women shaped Rome in silence, their legacy written in the fabric of daily life, in bread baked, water fetched, prayers offered, and wisdom passed down by lamplight. And though the centuries have passed, their story lingers. It is in every stone that still stands from their time, in every fragment of pottery, in every faded inscription to a beloved wife or devoted mother. So, as you drift into rest tonight, remember this: Rome's greatness was not built by emperors alone. It was carried in the arms of mothers, in the resilience of wives, in the laughter of daughters, and in the endurance of countless women whose quiet strength sustained the empire through all its triumphs and tragedies. Their story is not separate from Rome's history. It is Rome's history. Good night.